Jamal, did you happen to catch Trump's rally last night at Madison Square Garden?
I've been looking at a bunch of these clips, and the clips are really out of hand. I mean, seems like he decided to go in on everybody, whether it was, Puerto Rico or African Americans in the audience. Between him and the guests who were there, let's
Mm-hmm.
just say the
Mm-hmm.
entire rally looked like a great big slew of hate.
The
What did you think?
idea that Trump can distance himself from this is, I think, ridiculous because all of the things that one comedian said that were horrifically racist were loaded into a teleprompter, right? Like let's
Oh,
not
yeah.
pretend that the reaction to this is suddenly like, oh, but it was just a joke or we made a mistake. This was all very intentional. The anti-Semitism, the anti-Black rhetoric, the anti-Latino rhetoric. It's not worth repeating other than the fact that the hate was all out there as part of a closing message. I find the Puerto Rican comments to be especially misplaced. And here's why. Puerto Ricans are American citizens, but they decided to talk about them as if they were part of that big, those immigrants over there and those brown people. And there are more voters in swing states that identify as Puerto Rican than the margin that Trump won by. So he's making a calculus that the 50,000 Puerto Ricans in Wisconsin are not going to be offended or not know, or even if they do, it doesn't matter to him because he thinks he has enough white racist people on his side that he can win this election just by doubling down on the Hitler rhetoric.
All right. So here's what I think is happening. I think Trump is afraid. Right. They have been positioning themselves as if they're winning for the last couple of weeks. They're convincing all the journalists. They're telling people
Mm-hmm.
about these polls where they're actually behind or tied. Like, there are not a lot of polls that showed Trump ahead, but they've been positioning themselves as winning just because they're tied.
Hmm.
The reality is, though, that Kamala Harris is ahead in most of the polls. If not, she's ahead, she's tied. And when you look at that ABC Ipsos poll from Sunday, what you see is that inside of all these demographics, whether it's white women with college degrees or, white women without college degrees, African Americans, the delta, the difference between the vote for Harris and the vote for Trump is smaller in almost every
Mm-hmm.
demographic category, every subgroup than it was with Biden. She's doing better than Biden was in all these different demographic subgroups, except for maybe one. So the reality here for Trump is I think they know something that they are not telegraphing, which is that they're losing. And so what he's
Hmm.
doing is he's going harder, faster, and punchier in order to get the people who he needs to get to pay attention to him. Because like any other drug, the more you use the drug, the
Hmm.
more potent drug you got to use in order to get high. And he is trying desperately to get his people back on the fix so they show up and vote for him.
I mean, racism is a hell of a drug, right? It really
And it's
is.
a proven drug in this country.
It gives you an answer to everything that is not me, myself, and I, and taking
Right.
responsibility for anything, right? But he's doubling down on what he already has at the risk of conversations like this happening everywhere among communities, especially communities that were targeted as part of this rally, saying like, oh, wait a second, I
So
actually
here's the
really do need to get out and vote. Like he's
yeah.
actually motivating people who would maybe not have voted for Kamala Harris to be like, oh, wait a second, this is really problematic.
Well, the Trump campaign is super cynical. I mean, because what
Mm.
they're looking at when they go after Puerto Ricans is that we think of Latinos as a big,
Mm-hmm.
monolithic group. But obviously what they know, and those of us who pay attention to this know, is there are people from a bunch of different places. So if you're from Mexico, you may or may not feel a great affinity for people who are from Puerto Rico, or if you're from Cuba or Venezuela. And I think they're really playing for sort of the whiter skinned Latinos, if we were being
Mm.
frank, who are from some of the countries like a Venezuela. This is the communist attack against Kamala Harris, right? To try to remind them of the places where they came from, because in places like Florida or some of these other states, those are the Latinos that Trump thinks he can get.
Mm-hmm.
Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans. Those are the folks that he's trying to get. And so he's playing a very cynical game, I think, by trying to divide the Latino community based on country of origin. So going after Puerto Ricans who basically perform like African Americans in electoral politics, they tend to vote for Democrats. Going after them
Mm-hmm.
may not cost him with Puerto Ricans, but it may benefit him with some people from some other Latino American subgroups.
Well, and this is the other part of racism in American politics and history, which is that if you insult Black people, right, with all of the racist tropes, and you happen to just not mention Asian people, suddenly the Asian people are like, oh, 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 ha, ha, ha. Are we both white people and Asian people making fun of Black people now? Right. So that's the cynicism, right? Is the
Right.
dividing individual groups that should be allied together, but by being individually racist, right, by being anti-Semitic, is he trying to pick up some, pro-Gaza votes, right? Like, is that
Absolutely.
that's part of the calculus? And I think that's what made me
And they
feel
even went after
really,
Doug Emhoff. They went after Doug Emhoff
yeah.
yesterday for being "quote unquote" a bad Jew, or whatever. He used
Mm-hmm.
another word. I'm not going to use it here, but he went after Doug Emhoff on being a Jewish American. That wasn't enough because they're going after the conservative, pro Netanyahu Jewish
Mm-hmm.
community in the country, and they're willing to attack. Jewish people are willing to attack somebody like Doug Emhoff, who's a leader of their community, because they think it might benefit them to elect this guy who admires Hitler. It's just amazing to me.
Well, in Michigan, we do see some of this, I would say, not sophisticated politics taking root, where you have Yemenis, you have some Muslim leaders who have come out endorsing Trump. And it literally was because Trump came out, took a photo, and said a bunch of things that they wanted to hear, right? They're lies. Let's be clear. This is Mr. Muslim ban. This is Mr. Guy who is going to try to bomb Iran and is totally pro regime change and increasing conflict in the Middle East. But because he showed up and said hi and was willing to lie to people, he's now getting endorsements 10 days out. So people are
Yeah.
getting played. People are getting played because they're not as sophisticated as they should be at this point about how the American system works and the history of how it works.
So here's what makes me feel better. I was in Michigan for the weekend. I was home in Detroit for family reasons. And what I did a little bit of sussing around, trying to figure out what was happening, talking to friends who focus on GOTV and turnout. And I got to tell you, people in that state feel very confident. They feel much more confident than they felt in the last few weeks. I think they are seeing a turnout operation that is humming. They are seeing volunteers who are showing up. They are knocking on doors. They're getting people who are responding. They got ads, they got mail. And the Republican women that everybody's looking for who are in some of these suburbs are starting to quietly whisper that they're voting for Kamala Harris. I think Trump knows this. The Republican women are turning on him, and he doesn't know what to do, which is why all he can do is go hard for the bigoted bros.
So your answer then is get offline, stop doom scrolling, and recognize that there is an opportunity and joy here. And some of the joy is also the translation of women's rage. I think polls are totally underestimating women's rage in this moment and how that's going to translate into the election. But really, early vote, talk to friends, take this out in real life and not worry about every single thing that comes on the screen. It's hard not to worry about Madison Square
course.
Garden hosting a former president and a whole slew of people who felt totally comfortable saying vile things out loud in the
Yes.
media center of the nation, right? They're like, we know
Right.
this is going to get covered. When 100 years ago, Nazis literally filled out Madison Square Garden saying similar things. Like, it is a
Right.
direct physical parallel to that. But
And here's the thing, and which, just to put a point on what you're saying, it's not an accident. Like,
No.
they didn't just, the campaign didn't just wake up and be like, oh my God, what'd they say? You don't program hours of speakers and not know what it is they came there to say.
yeah, so there's no excuse, right? This is who Trump is and what he wants to do. And recognize that, be aware of that, and then do what you got to do, which is get out and vote, get other people to vote.
Trump's going for the bigoted bros. We can stop him. We can
Thank you,
stop him.
Jamal. I needed this
All right.
conversation today. Thank you.
All right. See you later.